Congressman Cummings talked about lesson one: if you don't know them, don't assume you do. And so we have a moment here where we're going to get to know who's in our community, who are the solution makers, people that make things happen in our community. There was a New York Article's Time today that was kind of talking about capturing people's sentiments on growing up in Black in America. And it concludes with this statement: we can be a part of the solution only if we dare to open up and have the conversation. And so Dr. Janice Bowie is here to help us begin that courageous conversation. Dr. Bowie is an associate professor in health behavior and society here at Bloomberg and the Hopkins Center for Health Disparities Solutions. And her research includes minority and women's health, community-based participatory research, and spirituality. And she's designed and implemented interventions in partnership with community-based organizations and faith settings. And she is the center's primary resource for training and implementation, and a huge support to so many students, colleagues, faculty, and a person that I have come to admire. And so she's going to lead us through this conversation. And we also want to, if you will, please express great gratitude for our panelists who have taken out of their day, their life. I know they're dealing with a lot in the community themselves, and so to be here with us is the greatest treasure that we have. Can you thank them for their attendance today?
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I know our audience is dwindling a little bit, but we don't care about that. We're going to do what we came here to do. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to give them the charge. And the charge that was set at the beginning of our reflection and day of engagement was to listen to our community voices. And we are very excited that you have come to Hopkins today to be a part of this time with us and to help us to find solutions and ways in which our School of Public Health can respond. And also, we hope that you will impart information that will strike a chord with our students. We are in the next to the last week of school. So some of our students will be finishing and going on to start their professional careers or to continue with those. And so I'm hoping that what you say today will be something that they can carry with them as they leave the walls of this institution. So let me start by introducing you. Our first panelist is Naon Locust, and Ms. Locust has just been designated as one of the Urban Health Institute Unsung Heroes and has served as an ambassador of goodwill in her neighborhood of Berea and throughout East Baltimore for many decades. She has been a stalwart warrior against drug use and crime in her neighborhood. Then we have Kenneth Morrison. Mr. Morrison is the CEO of Do More Baltimore and the founding member of Sons of Baldwin Spoken Word Collective, and is the CEO of the organization that we heard the students speak to us so eloquently and so compassionately just a little bit ago. Mr. Morrison is Baltimore born and obviously is a poet, an artist, an advocate, an organizer, and educator, and for the past 10 years, has been on a trajectory of developing and improving the quality of youth resources in the Park Heights area, as well as in the larger spheres of our city and state. And then we have Pastor Antoine Bennett, and Pastor Bennett is the ruling elder at Unsung Community Church, which is in the Sandtown, Winchester community in West Baltimore. Pastor Bennett himself ended up spending 3.5 years in prison, a stint he describes as frightening. And while there, he earned his degree, he read tons of books, and felt compelled upon his release to give back to the community he once harmed. In 2012, Pastor Bennett created Men of Valuable Action, a leadership development program that strives to reduce recidivism among men in the community by promoting education, encouraging family stability, and offering career development support. And then, of course, most of us are no stranger to Reverend Debra Hickman. And Reverend Hickman is the co-founder and CEO of STAR, which is Sisters Together and Reaching, which is a faith-based nonprofit community organization that provides spiritual support, direct services, and prevention education to HIV and AIDS infected and affected African American women and men. And then we have James JT Timpson. And JT is the site director for Safe Streets, Park Heights in Baltimore. As the director of Safe Streets, Park Heights, JT leads a staff of 6 workers to help prevent and reduce homicides in Baltimore's Northwest District. And then we have Selwyn Ray, JD, and Mr. Ray is the Vice President of Community Engagement and Partnership for Big Brothers and Big Sisters and the Maryland Mentoring Partnership, and was formerly the Executive Director of MMP. And while there, he oversaw initiatives to increase the number and quality of mentoring programs, providing children with caring adult mentors in their lives throughout the state. And then we also have Lieutenant Colonel Melvin Russell. Is Lieutenant Colonel Russell here? Okay, all right. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Melvin Russell, should he arrive, is the Chief of Community Partnership Division of the Community Partnership Division for the Baltimore Police Department. So we want to thank you again, and we're going to spend just a little bit of time asking our panelists to think about what was said. Let's think first about what Congressman Cummings spoke about and the takeaway of pain, passion, and purpose. And then we heard from Dr. Levis, who talked about the elephants in the room and the 4 disparities that will need our attention and have synergistic effects on the lives of our citizens in Baltimore, those being education, health, criminal justice, and wealth. And then finally, Dr. Nguyen talked about the importance of patient and community-centered care and the need to preserve the dignity and to be a voice and an advocate and to show that all lives matter. And so with that as our backdrop, I would like to ask each of you to just take a few moments to share from your heart how you felt about the experiences that have been taking place in our city, understanding that they didn't just start with the tragic and untimely and premature death of Freddie Gray. And to share what is on your heart about that, and then we would like for you to then share what you feel might be a solution that we as a School of Public Health can partner with to begin to develop strategies, either short-term and or long-term. And I'm happy to repeat those as we go. So let's start with Ms. Locust.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today to express any feelings about what has happened in our city. As a lifelong resident of Baltimore City, growing up from a very young child, I've seen the city go through many changes. And there's so many problems that I see, mainly health, jobs, and education. I don't think you can take them, excuse me, out of the equation. They have to work hand in hand in order to bring the city around. And while the congressman has come up with some great ideas, we have to implement them. We have to show people in the city this time that we really mean we're going to change our city. The atmosphere must change, and it will change. And it will change for the better if we work together as a community, whether it's our health issues, whether it's the education, whether it's jobs. We must have all three. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Ms.
Can you all hear me clearly? Yeah. Awesome. So in response, I want to start by talking about the comment around, I guess, the evolution of pain as relates to youth development. I just want to add, I think Congressman said that pain produces passion, which I think produces purpose.
That's correct.
I want to add appropriate processing of pain produces passion, which produces purpose. Too often in communities, pain goes unprocessed. There are few spaces being provided for young people to begin to process the experiences they are going through. And do more, poetry is a tool that we use, and it's just tools. Poetry is a tool we use not to provide young people just platforms to speak to, in venues like this, but the very first step is creating a space for young people to bring everything you just heard to a space and start talking about what they are experiencing every day, tools they are using to begin to process that my father's incarcerated, my brother was murdered, my mother, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are very few spaces being provided for young people to have these types of discussions and be provided the tools they need to begin to process that pain. There's other things I want to say, but I'm a poet. Now, this is a 30-second piece I want to share. Poetry is my preferred way of talking to people. When asked about what happened on last Monday, my board of directors argued that I make a public statement, and I was like, I'm not sure if you want me to say what I really feel publicly, so I'll just let the young people speak. But this is, when a publisher asks me what I have to say, okay, I can express myself that way, so I published this really short poem. It's called Son of Baltimore. In Baltimore, Maryland, there's a boy holding a brick in front of a CVS. On the back of the brick are the remnants of dreams either shot or deferred. Our schools would never mention it. Our news would never note this. The letters written boldly in hope, as windows shatter, his note goes unnoticed. This burning building is not part of his revolution. It is a pit stop in between his school and his home. He has never known a safe city. He has never known a street without broken bottles. He has never known a corner without police. With a parade of rocks and signs, he welcomes the whole world to his hood, invites them to gather on his corners. Corners normally reserved for visuals for murdered black boys. Today he welcomes Fox and CNN to stand there instead. As they prop their cameras next to teddy bears and liquor bottles, they attempt to tell the story the world is waiting for. The cameras catches him standing on a police car. Reporters speak to what is broken in Baltimore: shields, windows, bones, buildings. The list is long. Oppression is not on their list. The boy is not on their list. There's a picture of a brick lying on the side of a building. The world has confused these stones for weapons. Bricks are nothing more than tools we use to build. Let the whole world see what the children of Baltimore built on this night. It is big, it is bold, and it is both ugly and beautiful.
Before you speak, Pastor Bennett, I would like to say that this is a safe space for you to share your ideas. And so we want to make sure that you don't feel that because you're at Johns Hopkins in this auditorium that you need to feel insecure or unsafe or intimidated. We want to dispel with all of that. Here we are all equals. And so we invite you to feel comfortable in sharing whatever it is on your heart. And I'm going to sit down because we are community.
We just made an executive decision to go in order. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Timpson. I'm the director of Safe Streets Park Heights. I thank Kenneth for that piece because it was really powerful, and it goes a lot with what we see and what we deal with every day. And what goes unnoticed is that our youth in Baltimore are traumatized. And most of them have been traumatized their whole lives. And that's what we don't talk about. We talk about the destruction. We talk about the buildings that burned. We talk about a lot of different issues, but we're not really talking about the roots of all of them. On Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, probably the whole week, heard a lot of stigmas, a lot of names, a lot of different things that we were being categorized. And it just really led me back to think of how broken we really are. Baltimore is a city of neighborhoods, not a city of gangs and everything else that our own police department wants to categorize it as. It's not a city of gangs. Because I don't care where you live in Baltimore, if you live in West Baltimore, if you live in Park Heights, if you were blood when you locked up, when you come home to Park Heights, you're not a blood no more, you from Park Heights. That's how Baltimore is built. Now, it may be neighborhoods with subsets, little gangs in them, and whatever you may want to call them, that's fine. But that's just a group of neighborhood kids who got together who all happen to be in the same affiliation. We should not be categorizing our city as a city of gangs. That's number one. We're a city of neighborhoods. I think, the second thing is that we expect, the unfortunate thing is we expect criminals to engage in criminal behavior, right? But what we don't expect is our law enforcement to fall into the same line. Law enforcement are meant to uphold the law, right? And never will I go and say that law enforcement is not important and they don't have a place in this community, because we definitely need them. Programs like mine, we're not here to tell people to stop selling drugs. We're not here to do any of that. Our major goal is to reduce homicides and shootings. Because the one thing I can't do is I can't go tell that boy to get off the corner and stop selling drugs, knowing that he has no other alternatives to feed his family. And it's until the day where the resources are available that we can start offering them hope about what to do when you get off the corner, is the day that I can go out and feel comfortable with preaching and get off the corner. The majority of the kids I talked to this week, both down in Penn and North and all across the city, the one thing that they expressed was the pain. I never felt so much pain from this young generation of not being heard. It was just amazing how talking to these kids this week really opened my eyes, and I'm in the streets every day. That's what we do. I'm out there every day in the trenches, and I just could not believe the ability of these kids to express the pain that they were feeling about not being heard. And that's what you saw on Monday. That's what you saw boil to a head. Because if you look at it and think back, and it's not something to be proud of that happened, but it was a necessary evil. It was a necessary evil. And if you look back on it and you think about it, and you think about the way that those kids ran circles around the city and ran circles around the police and ran circles around everybody, it shows you that we're not dealing with dummies. These kids are smart. These kids have ideas. They have dreams, and we got to help them realize that. The one thing I do every day is I sell hope. But when will I stop being able to sell hope and be able to offer them reality of an actual change? And that's what we're really looking for. I could go on and on and on, but I'll pass it over to Pastor Bennett.
Just one point of clarification before I speak briefly. Some who know me certainly will say that I have a pastor's nature and sort of way about me. I certainly can talk as long as an average pastor can. But for clarification purposes, I am an elder in my church, minister in areas of distinction. At best, minister of outreach, and so I'm in the community often, my community often, but I'm not Pastor Antoine Bennett. Though, if you want an honorary thing, that's fine. We go with it. I'll be Pastor Bennett for a little while. Freddie Gray would be considered a neighbor of mine. We share the same community. We share the fact that we were both lifelong residents. I am, and he was, a lifelong resident of Sandtown. I'm born and raised in Sandtown, and buying a home in Sandtown. Now, I bring this up not to suggest that makes me deeper or closer to the pain than anybody in this room. That's not the case at all. Just merely to state that there was a uprising in my home, my community, that's all. And that it was surreal in a lot of ways. I certainly can relate to the brother when he says it was a necessary evil. It makes me think of course, Dr. Martin Luther King's quote that rioting is the voice of the unheard. I'm sure that's been tossed around. He says some other thing. We know that Dr. King was a lover of peace, peaceful protest. It was mentioned in the bio. I don't know who wrote that, but I want to commend him. I feel like writing him a check. It was a wonderful bio that was written on me. Love a copy, by the way. I almost wondered who were they talking about. But on a serious note, I am the founder of Men of Valuable Action, MOVA, Baltimore. And we seek to assist in ways the men who return to our community of Sandtown, Winchester, 72 blocks from prison. We seek to assist the men who have, the young men who have dropped out of high school, and equally important, the men who are dads in the community. In doing so, I'm up close to the pain. I myself, I was mentioned that I myself am an ex-offender, 21 years removed from penitentiary life. I think it was described as me being frightened by my experience. That's a little misnomer. I was frightened by my stupidity that led me to prison. I embraced the fact that I went to prison because it was the best education I've gotten so far. Life lesson. But I was determined to leave prison much smarter than I was going in. See, I thought, like so many of our young brothers, you talk about, and I agree with the brother that Baltimore is not a city of gangs. We have cliques at best. You know, when we grew up, that's my clique, right, which is different than a gang. I get an opportunity to see up close how important it is that these young brothers, I'm not just talking about our teenagers, but our young adults as well, have a place where they feel like they truly belong. what you're missing, and I think the brother alluded to it, and I'm sure in our sharing that we're all going to touch on the fact that our young people, our teens are out there, particularly the young men, they want to belong to something. Many of them are emotionally homeless as we look at society, as we experience this city, and as we experience community life. We have 328 homes built, or 22 homes built through our Habitat program, and 90% of those homeowners are single-parent homes. We have placed in our efforts as a community, as organizations, hundreds, over 1,000 residents over our 20 years of community development with the organization called Unsung. Close to 2,000 residents alone in Sandtown. Over 85% of those placements were women. Now, I'm not in any way being or intending to slight the need to be there for and support and encourage the women in our community. The good, and there's a lot of it, that you find in my community, in communities like Sandtown, is because of two institutions in the inner city. The church and our women. Well, what I am saying to you is that, and forgive me if I'm sounding like I'm preaching, you just invited me here, so I'm just speaking what's on my heart. What's missing is the men. They're forced, we are forced to look at pictures that don't have us in them. You see, it's human psychology that suggests that, or holds the fact that if you look at a picture that you are in, your tendency is to judge the worth of that picture by how you look in that picture. You value that picture by how you look and fit in that picture. The progressive things and the positive things that are happening in our community are largely being performed by folks other than ourselves. And we wonder why Freddie Gray, who was baseless in our community, and his life has become the basis of a change in Baltimore through his death. It took him dying. It took an explosion for us to be at a point where we are, where we can think about engaging Baltimore City. That's not to say, and I'm not saying that anything prior to what took place in my community, since Inez, our community, over the last week, 2 weeks, that's a strong leader, one of my leaders in the community, who's Inez Robb. Take a bow, stand up. Stand up for me, sis. And I won't be too much longer, but this woman is working tirelessly. You know, she was at a meeting with the mayor last night in our community, well into the late evening, and here she is here today representing our community. We're missing a lot of things. We're missing what true engagement of our young folks are all about. And when I talk about engagement, I'm talking about embracing them while at the same time confronting them, because that's what it takes. I deal with a lot of our young men through MOVA who come through the door, who recognize in their intelligence that people look for the pistol in their hand instead of the passion in their heart. They question and judge them on the pitifulness that they think that they have in their lives instead of the pain that they have to deal with. Let's talk about that while we spend time together. They want what all of us want: healthy, productive lives. Now, I'm not saying that they're victims. I'm saying a lot of them are just as stupid as I was 20 plus years ago. But I do know, and I agree with this brother, we talk about removing them from criminal life. And not all of them are in criminal life, but we're talking about removing them from an at-risk status. We gotta have something to take them to. Let's not get them all dressed up with no place to go. Let's not wait until they're behind the trial tables before they take their future seriously. We are one city. We are one community. Freddie Gray was on me. Freddie Gray is on you. Let's talk about how we can prevent our young brothers like Freddie Gray from becoming ex-cons, and let's work on helping them to be the icons that we know they are.
This is my first panel that I have been invited to, my first session that I have been to since the violence broke out on last week. I have refused to come to the site. I have refused to be a part of the clergy that have sat in rooms, the mayor's press conferences, and all of these things, because we should be talked out by now. Yes. We have been talking for far too long. We have talked past our 400 years of slavery. We have talked past that period of 200 years of putting in place what the young man characterized as a system that is not broken, but it is working as it was designed. It is time for us to face a truth about ourselves as African Americans living in freedom at this point in time that our forefathers and mothers brought us to and through. It is time for us to stop allowing ourselves to be specimens under a microscope, constantly being asked one question or another when we already understand that violence is a healthcare issue that should have been being mitigated long before last Monday, and it did not happen. Violence is a healthcare issue that has not been mitigated because of the fact that the social determinants of health, a word that we use in these illustrious rooms, but means nothing on the street because they don't know that you're using them and saying about us that the social determinants of health, that you're a victim of the social determinants of health, because they don't understand it, and nor have we made opportunity to make certain that they understand those three words on the street of economic depression and all of these things, a lack of education. I disagree friendly and respectfully to the congressman that education is no different on the streets than it is in here. Everybody's educated, everybody is intelligent, it is all relative. And we need to begin to respect others on the street so that they will also respect you when you come out there to work with them. And until we do that and give respect to all and understand that every man and woman, whether they come into a higher level of education or not, they are aware of what is around them, what their needs are, and they are looking for us to respond. And so I wrote down quite a few things because the community has been taking care of itself and its own for quite some time. But the community also has been turning itself on itself for quite some time. We cannot place all of the blame on one structure, on the police department, when in fact a young man that was in as a barber just a week ago or sometime this week got shot in his head 4 times, not by a police officer, but by one of his own. That's right. We must honestly face up to what is going on in our community. We have trauma that has never been dealt with. And I always bring up Beloved because Toni Morrison wrote and had an amazing movie out called Beloved that we have refused to watch because we say it was too dark. But what is dark is that we don't want to look at ourselves and see the pain that we have been holding on to for far too long. And we need someone to come in and help us to help ourselves and our children. There's no mental health in our schools that actually does from pre-kindergarten all the way through high school to be able to do an assessment and get our children the assistance that they need. But you cannot just help the child, you must help the parents and the homes from which they are coming from. When we want to put funds out and monies out, we don't want to do anything with the adults. We want to put money into children. Children cannot rule their parents. The parents are ruling them. And then we have leaders. Our community since 1968 looks the same as it did then when the riots broke out, as it does today, because money came to leaders that looked like me, that looked like him, and it got passed through. Is that not right, Leon? That's right. Leon Purnell is sitting there, and as that money got passed down, the money that was meant to build and rebuild our lives did not come to us, but those same leaders might be holding some titles today and riding around in their Bentleys and riding around in their Mercedes and all of the rest. I'm gonna tell you a truth. That's right. We want somebody to come and rescue us. Somebody did come by to rescue us, but the somebodies of us didn't take enough respect and honor for us. What do I need Johns Hopkins to do today? I need Johns Hopkins to know that they hold a seat on the right hand of God in this city, in this state, in this nation. They have more power than the mayor has. They have more power than the governor has. I need for their trustees to come down out of the dome. I need the dome to lift its skirt and actually call the power players to the table. I need that. We need that. We need that. We need that because I don't need you just to give us some money. Because you're already saying that, well, we tried this and it didn't work. It didn't work because there was no policy in place to encourage owners of businesses to actually do a baseline assessment of a mental health, a baseline mental health assessment, so that I would know that I need to not only provide my employee with 8 hours of work, but get them a coach to work alongside their mental health issues. That I needed also to be able, in my grants that I write, to write in there that I need a coach to come in and provide some job etiquette for the people that I am hiring from community because they are not job ready, but I want them in my space because I believe that they have the power to get the goals and objectives accomplished because they know the community. Isn't that right, David? They know the community. It's time to stop talking. We got the solutions. We need to take the research out of the halls and put it into translational images that can actually function in community. We need no more persons to ask me, so how many times have you been? How many this? How many that? So that you can get your name on a piece of paper and you get paid, but we get nothing. We need to understand that there are traumatized people in Baltimore City's illustrious different departments that will say no to him and yes to you. And they look like me. We need to understand that my son's senior center didn't burn down because the looters burnt it down. That was a crime of opportunity, of a community of jealousy, a community that wanted to say, I'm going to show you, or ask, where is your God? If you think I'm lying, go and examine the site, and you will know that the children would not have taken that much time to burn down a bus and to burn all of the perimeter, and didn't care if they burned down the homes that were on the other side that were occupied by senior citizens. It is time for us to stop playing these games. It's time to really roll up our sleeves. As Selwyn said, I didn't think you were here. You look like Angela Davis today. Well, I don't, intentionally, it's a bad hair day, been a bad hair week, and Leon says I got miracle grease. And so therefore, you know, I'm just here to tell you the truth. I'm here because Mike Clegg is in the house. I'm here because Mike Clegg is in the house, David Hopegrave is in the house. Josh Sharfstein was here. I got Amy Gawad sitting in for Bob Blum. And I believe that every word that we are saying in this room, every syllable, is going to go back and reach the Board of Trustees. It's going to get to Ron Daniels. There is no such thing that when you come in our communities that you won't be respected and that you won't be protected.
That's right.
But when I come in, hey, I might get kicked to the curb. There might be some clergy that has some hard words for me, but I got something for them too. Because the same God created all of us. We're all sons and daughters. We're all sisters and brothers. Some of us got and some of us don't, and what the some of us that have need to begin to come alongside those that don't, that are out in the community doing the work. We got work to do. We have some healing to do. I need Hopkins to assemble all of those leaders and to begin a strategic planning process that is not going to be an overnight sensation, but begin to really look at the educational system that was stripped of our monitors that we used to have on the street called truant officers, that made certain that if you were a child between 5 and 18, you had to show proof if you were not with your parent while you were on the street, and Miss White took you by your ear and took you back to the classroom. I need for the guidance counselors to be put back into the schools. Not one guidance counselor for every 3 or 4 schools, but in every school individually needs guidance counselors. I need for the nursing staff to be put back in the individual schools. Those are the things that I need you to begin to have discussion about. I need for you to make certain that if parents are missing from the PTAs or whatever they call them today, the Parent Teacher Association, and don't have the information on how am I going to make sure Johnny is fit for school and ready the first quarter of school. I need you to make certain that there is some places that are going to give parenting education to make sure that they know how to parent. I need housing that is adequately available and is not rat infested, that is not wireless, that is wired correctly. I need then for people to make certain that the rent is at a level that people can afford to live in them. I shouldn't have to cross over Fayette Street on Milton Avenue to begin to see a difference in the housing that is across Fayette Street than the housing that is down by Milton and Biddle. There is something wrong there. And I can't afford to live across Fayette Street because the rent is too high. But down here, the rent is just as high, but I'm in a building that is dilapidated. That's right. That is a sad state of affairs. I need for us to be able to make certain that all of our men and women, our daughters and our sons are getting adequate health care. I need for us to make certain that Johns Hopkins lifts the dome skirt and does something different. Johns Hopkins has been in a transformative state and building a marvelous bridge between community and the institution for some time now. But I have to say, I pray that Johns Hopkins himself has raised up out of the grave and saying, Debbie, talk. Because this is in his last will and testament, that we make certain that we take care of the children, that we make certain that we are doing those things that will make sure that communities are tight-knit together. My $1,000 word now, it used to be a dollar word, but it is time for us to interdigitate regardless of the color line and regardless of the red lines that still exist in our communities. Thank you very much.
Sister
say that in love because what you just did was spoke truth. And people reacted to that truth. And as I reminded myself of what I experienced on the street, Reverend Hickman, I listened to what James said. He said he's on the streets and he never saw so much pain in his life. I thought I was the only one, James. I knew I wasn't, but I felt like my eyes hadn't seen it, so since it was so new to me, was it just me that saw it? I was in a prayer circle with one of your boys, just passed by, and two other men that had orange fluorescent vests on from the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team. It's real. We were praying for a gentleman, and then a little lady pushed her way in. She probably was 18 years old and said, "I need some of this." She listened for a while, James, and then after the prayer finished, I felt, Reverend Hickman, that it wasn't exactly the type of prayer that I would have prayed, so I said, let me pray a little bit. I put my hand on her shoulder. By the way, she had a little mask on her face, and I won't go any further. She was hiding something, and I just began to pray about her condition, her pain, her hope, her destiny, her purpose. And every time I prayed deeper about her, I lost myself. She went lower to the ground. And of course, you know what the conclusion was. She did accept something that hopefully will help her. But what I was reminded of when I left, I walked by about 25 people, James, and they were young brothers, and they were lined up against the wall. I nodded to a few of them, no platitudes at that point in time, but each person looked me in my eyes, and I felt in the eye contact that they were saying, "Don't forget, you got to come back. I know you're passing through. I saw you up there praying for my girl. Come back." That's what was whispered into my ear. Really quickly, Mondawmin Mall was pilfered for a minute. And yes, property damage is destructive. But what was even more destructive in my mind, there was a clinic called the Young People's Health Connection that existed there in Mondawmin Mall. And I was privileged and blessed, my health professionals, to have worked there. A little secretary, 20 years old, would greet the patients who were young people when they were late, not with a horrible look, but, "Girl, where you been? Go sit down." And the love that was there was remarkable. It was named by young people. Mayor Schmoke helped to name it. We had a rap room for the boys. We had a rap room for the girls. The nurses loved their patients. The doctors loved their patients. The children knew it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place. The Young People's Health Connection in Mondawmin Mall, you talked about it, defunded. State money disappeared. The good health commissioner's gone. But the bottom line is we have to continue speaking about those things and realize that there should be a universal reaction to that. Maybe I didn't speak loud enough. Why was that specific center closed and why all these other maladies exist? Universal reaction. What I was reminded of, James, I hope you don't mind me referring to you, but you touched me when you spoke about that pain, because that was the most pain I've ever seen in one time in my entire existence on this planet, just 58 years. But we are missing one thing, and I felt this just from my health education background. When we have a family member, usually that's derailed a bit or has a challenge, whether it be health or mental or monetary, the entire family focuses on that child. There's a Pink Floyd song, some of you all know it, called Us and Them. We've gotten into the mode of us and them. So if a family member in our family is in trouble, we love immediately. But in this condition that we've created, we separate and respond to individuals based on other things. I don't have to go into them, but they do deal with class. They do deal with race. They do deal with station in life. But in family, rarely we do that. Sometimes it happens because nothing's perfect on this planet. But I was reminded even more. Did you all know that a great Buddhist leader came to West Baltimore? The Pope sent a statue to the family where the 9 people died in Annapolis. I was amazed. I just read the front page just to see where we are during the day. I was amazed at what was so simple in that process. We had these 2 leaders that I just mentioned, and there are many more, that came to respond to a condition in Baltimore as outside family members when the inside family members aren't doing that. So the solution rests in looking at us not as Johns Hopkins, a separate entity, but Johns Hopkins, a family member connected to the other family members in the Baltimore community, which it did quite well the other day with Amy and Mindy and others. Dean was there to elevate unsung heroes in the community. I'm talking about people in the community just 15 minutes away from here that change bedpans, and they may be moving into the bedpan stage. Community members that have, moved drugs off the corner. They were raised up. So Hopkins is connecting to his family. We got to go deeper. As I look at my notes, I'm reminded of one thing, that this rage that we see in Baltimore is not just in Baltimore, because I speak to young people and I try to get a global perspective, and sometimes when I'm doing a sermon, I always do the world backdrop. Our world is enraged. Our world is outrageously expressing a lot of response to pain. So it's just not little old beautiful charmed city, it's the planet. So what can we do? It's very simple. As this wonderful, and the congressman said, one of the greatest schools on the planet. That's a big thing to be in one of the greatest schools on the planet. What we can do is express our intelligence, express our passion, express all that we have. And you said it, Reverend Hickman. You talked about the research. You talked about the policy. But the ultimate connection is when we put it into practice. And that has to happen through something very simple. I have been doing this for quite a while. I tend to believe it might be my destiny. I've been working with young people. A young person came into the building, and I'm about to finish very quickly. The other day we have a program to help youth transitioning from the juvenile care system. And of course, he looked like I knew him. So I said something to him, my man, something like that. And he said, very succinctly, I could put it into a rap. He said, you don't know me. Since I've had so much interaction with young people, I was prepared to respond to it, so I gave him a good one. James, almost like I was on Penn and North, I said, what you talking about, man? He responded with eye contact. I looked back with him, not with disdain, but with love, and said, let me get you a cup of water. She getting a cup of water. You want a cup of water? You want ice in your water or what? Yeah, give me some ice. Next thing I know, a connection was made. Now, I could have easily said, who is this crazy boy coming into my office acting mean and nasty? But we know his pain. Here's my point. My mentee is in the room, and I'm going to close. Stand up, Dwight Mayo, 39 years old. Met him when he was 12 years old at Park Heights in Belvedere. We've been together ever since, and they claim you're not supposed to give money, you're not supposed to do this. I mentored him the way that I wanted to be loved and touched, and he's the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. The reason I asked him to stand up, he came to me, some of you have heard this story, I think, Dean, you might have heard it, I don't know. He said to me one day in his 20s, he's 39 now, I used to always constantly think he was 15 until he told me, I'm not 15, man. He poked me in my chest and said, you know what, man? I said, what? He said, if it wasn't for you, I would be dead or in prison. At that time that he said it, I started crying because I knew there were some other options that could have been in there, but guess what I did for those few years, 20 plus years? I told him I loved him, told him he was brilliant, told him go to school, told him put that gun down, which he rarely picked up, told him stay away from that boy. He's seen more death and destruction, James, than I can even imagine. Sometimes he would tell me stories, I couldn't sleep at night. Sometimes he would call me up, man, they beat that boy up bad last night. I said, did you call the police? He said, nope, I went in my house and went to bed. Would I judge him? No way. He survived, but now he's mentoring young people. So what I say to you as a solution, School of Public Health, Bloomberg School of Public Health, and the greater university is take your wisdom and start touching and mentoring the children and the people around you. Imagine if even 80% of you had a child that you adopted for the period of time that you were here. And I don't mean adoption in the formal sense of the word, but I mean adopted to exchange some of that wisdom, some of that love, because you all are brilliant, by the way, that you have, and imagine what that would do in that child's life. That young man, I looked at him one day, he said something to me, and I think I have a little bit of sense. He sounded brilliant, and he didn't go to university, he didn't go to Yale, he didn't go to Princeton, but he's been watching, he's been listening, and he's actually very upset at what's happening, and he's a peacemaker on the street. So I think one of the solutions is to keep doing things like this, because we've sat at this table before, haven't we, Deb? But the bottom line is the energy's elevating, the facilitator's superior, so we got a little love flowing, and once we get that to continue to happen, that wonderful research, which is brilliance, which is technical, which is real, can convert into extremely useful policies, and then I think you might have used the word translate. Some of it can be translated into action, and I've seen this many times, and then we have some great changes coming. One final thing that I wanted to say, and it was in this book. I asked my mentee, who's smarter than me, to pick me a quote out because I couldn't find one. It happened this morning. He did it in 10 seconds. I couldn't find one. Perfect quote. Here's what the quote says. Thank you, Manny. And it's by a photographer because they see light very well. Cheryl Dunn. It says, "It's good to make your mistakes when you're young and not afraid. But you should never be afraid to make mistakes. Life moves at the speed of light. People forget the mistakes, just keep making." So here's what I found in that, is that we have this opportunity, we have this option right before us. Let's start making the difference.
I want to thank our panelists, and I think we certainly received more than we could have expected. And I want to check with the facilitators, well, I guess I'm the moderator, not the facilitator, but whether there would be an opportunity for questions to our panelists. And we do have microphones on both sides of this room. If you would like to pose a question or if you have a comment, please feel free to do that now. And I will eventually turn this back over to Kelly and to Corey to outline and remind you of what the afternoon's activities will, what they are and where they will take place. I also thought that the comments that were made here while you're coming to the microphones, if anyone's going to come, the comments are many, but I think that it was solidified in what the school can do to help citizens live healthy, productive lives, and to, as Mr. Bennett said, to move them from ex-cons to icons. And how do we bring about emotional, how do we address emotional hopelessness among youth? And it seems like youth and young people and parents is something that resonated across all of our members, all of the panelists. So we now have people at the microphone, so if you want to pose your question, we'd love to hear from you. Why don't we start with you?
Thank you very much, everyone, for making this possible, everyone background, foreground in the panel. Something for Mr. Timpson and anybody else who wants to comment. Watching the news and watching the Crips and the Bloods and what was an amazing kind of interaction with the faith community that they got together and had their speech and stuff together. But you made a comment, Mr. Timpson, about how we're a city of neighborhoods and not gangs. And the kind of question is, how is it that they walked into that vacuum in the way that they did and almost kind of undid a little bit what you're presenting, I'm wondering. How is it that we can make sure that our neighborhoods stay strong and that those little, I live on, as I say to folks, on that side of Greenmount myself up in the Waverleys, and I see the same thing you're talking about, like small youth groups get together and decide they're gonna put on little bandanas. It's not this, I feel you. So how do we make sure that that piece doesn't come undone? That the Crips, the Bloods don't take that narrative from us.
I think what you saw, so if you look at it, like, I guess being on the street and understanding a little bit more about it, what you see is that if you know anything about like Crips and Bloods and all this, you know, gangs, BGF, all that group of guys that came together and spoke were all from the same neighborhood, right? So you tell me, if you go to LA, you don't have Crips living with Bloods. You don't have gangs coexisting in the same neighborhoods. They are segregated by parts of the city. In Baltimore, you have everybody living in the same neighborhood, right? So it's easier for them to say, oh, we're gonna call a truce, because I'm not saying it's not real, but what I'm saying is that it's easier for them to come to an agreement about peace and this, that, and the third amongst each other, because they all know each other already. They all live in the same neighborhood. They all grew up together, you know? So I think that the biggest thing for us to make sure that doesn't get undone is we have to keep allowing them to have that type of forum to be able to express themselves in whatever way they feel necessary. The one thing I do appreciate about that faith-based forum, because to be honest, I wasn't a big fan, because at least where we're at, the church is almost invisible to the work that we do.
All 50 of them?
Yeah, they almost invisible to the work that we do. And I'm not saying that's everywhere across the city. I'm saying where we are. So I'm not a big believer in the dog and pony show. Like, I'm not for all that. But I will say that right there was the realest that I've ever seen it actually be, because somebody actually took the time to listen to the pain of those guys. And those guys got together and decided to come together because they felt the need to express what it is. You know what? I don't know if any of you saw the interview with them on WBAL. Well, right before that interview, I don't know, you might have saw me walk through the background, but right before that interview, I had just talked to those guys, right? And I said to them, well, they said to me, you know what? I asked them, like, my biggest thing is I'm always conscious of guys getting in front of the camera, because I don't want them to expose themselves and make themselves victim to something later on. Right. So my whole goal to them was to just kind of prep them and say, look, I'm not going to tell you what to say, but I'm just telling you, be mindful of what you say, because it can come back to bite you. They will review these tapes later, trust me. But what they said was the importance of them making a statement together, because they wanted to dispel, what they said to me was they wanted to dispel the BS that the police put out about them trying to kill police officers, right? So they said that they felt such an urge to dispel that rumor that they decided, like, look, we just gonna all come together and just say that it wasn't true, you know? So I think, to answer your question again, we just gotta keep them engaged. We gotta listen to what it is they say that they need, you know, and we have to address what it is. Listening is one thing. Action speaks way louder than words, though.
All the panelists, this has been an amazing morning. So I think part of the difficulty that I've been having is, how can we, in the words of Elijah Cumming, how can we try to understand the community? I come from Ohio, small town in Ohio, mostly white, mostly middle class. And then I come to Baltimore, and I enter this amazing, deep community, extremely rich, and I'm trying to figure out how do I engage? How do I try to understand the community very deeply? The problem is, and I think a lot of the Hopkins community can understand this, I feel very separated from a lot of the neighborhoods in Baltimore. Right? A lot of us live in Mount Vernon. A lot of us live in Fells Point. A lot of us live in Canton or Hamden. Right? These neighborhoods that while they might be right next to Sandtown, Winchester, and Penn North, they're extremely separate. Right. You know, we were shocked. I mean, my girlfriend's mom was calling us when the 7-Eleven down the street got raided and there was glass everywhere. And it was like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen in white neighborhoods, right? I mean, that's a problem, right? That's that was my first experience with this. And so I think what I want to try and do is I want to try to understand how we as a community who is not used to engaging in these issues properly can do that. It's a deep anxiety that I have, and I think a lot of people have, when you talk about Hopkins engaging in an issue like this, because we do have this legacy and this history that's that is, yes, very engaging, very helpful, a lot of money, but it's also has been exploitative in the past.
If I can jump in real quick,
Yeah.
and I'll be short.
That was real quick, Pastor.
In short, and I'm not trying to be facetious here, don't wait for the next riot. Don't wait for the next riot. That sounds very simplistic, and so let me go a little deeper. There are plenty of organizations. I'll throw out one. My own New Song. New Song Community Church, who is committed to racial reconciliation and more, and have been for the last, Sister Inez can tell you, we have had over 25 families who were not African American move into our community. But the key is once you get there, I'm not asking you to move into our community, but I'm saying come, see what we're doing. Come with a servant heart, come with a listening ear. We don't need your solutions. We already know what the problem is. That's the problem that I think that the large part of the city don't realize. We know the problems and we know the solutions. It's just access. That's the issue.
And Pastor, I want to say, CNN should have come to see New Song Church. I don't know if they have yet.
They did. They called me personally, but I told them, I said, listen, my house on fire. Talk
Good.
to me when
Talk
things
to
are a
me a little
little
later.
calmer. You know,
Exactly.
when your house is on fire, you don't look for a microphone, you look
Exactly.
for water, and that's what we was looking for.
That's a jewel. The point was that's a jewel in the community that the world needs to know about that has been working. But I did want to say Hopkins has jewels inside of it. Rebecca Atnafu, along with Mindy and Amy, have these programs that you can have access to, and it's just source, and it's just what the pastor said. Don't wait for the next riot. But I got one faster. That gentleman with the pink shirt over there has sign-up cards that would allow you to sign up to become a mentor. And that would allow you to step not only into the community, but even engage in the family. The building that we're in, you have a perfect memory. The building that he was in, that we work in, the owner of the building has been a mentor for 3 years, and it's absolutely changed his life. Not only is he donating, he's done that before, but it changed your perspective. That young man there changed my perspective in life. He's not my only mentee, but when we get together, it's all like families. And if you'd like to talk to me, I would certainly gladly engage, because I can hear the passion in your heart.
And let me just say one more thing, and that is that act like you were back in Ohio. And what would you do to actually engage your community and with unfamiliar people around you that are not your color, don't have your economic status, and maybe the framework of education that you are used to? In other words, I'm saying integrate yourself, find someone in the community that you can say, I don't know anything about your community, but I want to be a part of the community. I want to do my part while I'm here and walk with them. Paul always went in to various missionary ventures, never came in to start doing things to people, but he worked with the people. And at a time when they asked, then he gave some recommendations after he was able to observe.
I just want to, this is directed at you for everyone else, okay? So be really clear. So all of our experiences are different. My experience with non-African Americans, African American community is that people come in for leadership roles. Like when I see a non-African American, African American community, they typically have a title. They're a director, they're a CEO. Like they're a leader of a community they don't really have a relationship with. So I would say come in not seeking leadership roles, right? Come in. People I have a lot of white friends and family members. I'm adopted by all white family, so all my family is white. And when I hear white people come to me like, how can we assist you? I need assistance. I need support. I don't need a boss, right? So be really clear that we have some solutions in our communities. We do need tools. We do need support, but we don't need leaders to come in from outside the community. And the second thing is tables. There's a lot of metaphors about, we need more community members at our tables. Hopkins should not own a table in Baltimore City. The community owns the tables, and we are constantly invited to come to Hopkins' table right? We're constantly invited to come to their tables because they need community representation at their table, right? When we own the tables, Hopkins need to come to our tables, right? Because we have our own tables. And you are all invited to come to our table.
I don't have
I would like to say one thing. As the oldest member up here at this panel, and probably the oldest one living in East Baltimore, I have listened to a lot of things today, but I lived this community. No one had to tell me. I grew up and went to Dunbar High School, a segregated high school. We had mixed communities when I was growing up. I only lived in an all-black community after 1968 when they had the riots. We lived in a mixed community. We made it our business to know what was going on with the Italian people, what were going on with the Polish people. And we were a community. I think people here nowadays think, then they say neighborhood. It's a community. It's where you live. It's where you invest your interests. Those of us that live up in Berea are having a struggle right now because we are losing values of our homes. Berea was probably one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in East Baltimore. So we've always been politically active. We've always been involved with our schools. This is something that I, as the oldest person up here, grew up in the city. And years ago, I remember my dad telling me how we didn't have a recreation center in East Baltimore. And he and Dr. Ralph Young, a black doctor who was allowed to practice here at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Ralph Young and Dr. Simon Williamson, who was pastor of Faith Baptist Church, we're talking about over 50 years ago. They got together with some people here at Johns Hopkins and also with Mayor McKeldin, who was our Republican mayor then. And he said, I'm going to put a recreation center in East Baltimore. We had nothing, but we got Chick Webb Center, and that was a highlight for East Baltimore. So all I'm saying is many hands can do good work. What they're doing in Sandtown and all over West Baltimore, that's fine. But let's focus on the whole city of Baltimore. Johns Hopkins has an obligation, yes. It's the largest institution in the city of Baltimore. But we also need to not only hold Johns Hopkins, let us hold our elected politicians, because nobody comes in any neighborhood, I don't care whether it's Sandtown, whether it's Gwen Oak, or wherever it is, no developers are allowed to come in unless the community approves of it. And we're losing things over here in East Baltimore, but we're like voices crying in the wilderness because the city is all abreast with what's going on everywhere. And that's fine. But don't forget about the heart of this city, East Baltimore. East Baltimore does make a difference. You have to, if you're gonna look out for West Baltimore, then I'd be darned if you don't look out Johns Hopkins for East Baltimore. We surround your institution. And many of these community groups, like Dr. Hickman alluded to, have been trying for years, doing their little part. But it's gonna take a whole lot of people working with these organizations to get the ball rolling. And since Johns Hopkins is right here in the heart of our community, let Johns Hopkins show the people that we mean business, we mean to help you get our schools together. Get jobs for these young people. You can talk to the young people and you can tell them about jobs. Open up some jobs, make provisions. If you want the city to move, somebody better be listening. And I mean really listening, because I lived through 1968. I can tell you what happened here in Baltimore City. And I would never want to see that happen again. We have a city that can be saved. We're at a point now where somebody is listening. Let's make actions. Let's get them to work for us. And when you don't have young people educated, you don't have young people working, you have a restless group of people. I don't care where you are in America, not just Baltimore.
So we're coming up on the, in fact, we're past time. So I know you have been standing there for a very long time, and I want to give you the final word.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Ms. Naon, my sister from Berea, for inviting me to come. Thank you, each and one of the panelists, for speaking so eloquently, especially you, Debra, Reverend Debra Hickman. What I'm calling, I see this thing says Engage Baltimore. I'm a little nervous here about saying this, but I want to talk to anybody who can help. Because inside of me, as a member of Berea, I work at Fort Worthington Recreation Center. I'm involved with the children of Fort Worthington Elementary School, school number 85, which is one of the #1 year schools that is being renovated. And we just recently, as a community, are practically reeling the frustration, not just from the youth, but from the adults, as we see the architects made a wonderful design that eliminated our recreation center. And I've been asking, what are we going to do with the 1,000 children in our neighborhood? What are they going to do? There is no other place to play. The design of Fort Worthington, of the Berea community, is all houses. The only open space was where the school is and the recreation center. And what I'm coming here hoping that maybe Hopkins or someone will come and tell us, one, I know during demolition, reconstruction, yeah, things got to move away. We're going to need some help in our neighborhood. We're not full of a lot of financial resources and a lot of different resources. If you know where we stand on the census with the social determinants, we're way down in the bottom. We need a lot of help. Food desert, we know about that. Below poverty level, I mean, we're less than 150% below the poverty level. Education, Fort Worthington is a nice place to be, but is ranked like number 700 and something out of 800 schools. We need some help. In the next few years to come, when they're making all these changes, I'm asking as a member of the neighborhood, saying, if you could come and give us some help, give us some ideas, give us some hope, because I've been putting out the word. We did not ask for our recreation center to be demolished. Recreation and Parks did not say they were closing our center. A design team came in with a better look for our neighborhood, which the community keeps saying, we don't like this. We don't want an amphitheater. We don't need a waterfall. We don't need a bridge. We need playgrounds. We need a safe place for our children to be. Our recreation center right now is a neutral zone, no matter whether you live on Biddle Street, whether you live on Oliver Street, Federal, Edison Highway, top of the hill, bottom of the valley, you can come to that recreation center. I work every day for free with these children, not because I don't need to be with more children. My children are grown, but my heart is with these children, because I listen to them when they talk to me. I'm supposed to be teaching them math and stuff, but what I really do is Miss B listens. Miss B listens to what's going on in their hearts. Miss B is a safe place. You can come and tell me about what happened last night, or what happened yesterday, or what you're afraid of. These riots come in. It didn't happen in our neighborhood, but our children hear it. They need a place to come, and right now I'm just begging. I don't care whether it's Hopkins, whether it's you or HMU, come across from West Side. I was West Side for about 30 years in Baltimore. I'm now East Side. But come and help us. As we go forward, we don't even know how to do the fight. We want to protest. We want to say, listen to us. We're not throwing rocks. We're too old to be out there throwing rocks. I don't have the energy to do that. But my thing is this, listen to us. We went to the meetings, we said, please listen to us. As a matter of fact, my last thing, March 11th, I said, don't listen to my words, listen to my heart. You're ripping my heart out. I have no place to meet as a community. I don't know what's gonna happen to my children. Do you not care? And now I'm just saying, it said engage Baltimore. So as nervous as I am, I'm standing up here and I'm asking each and every one of you, you got some ideas, make some noise, let them know, because it's not just gonna happen to our neighborhood, it's gonna happen to all the neighborhoods. So it's time for us as Baltimore neighborhoods, which I love about Baltimore, is for us to speak up, because if you can do it to one, if you can erase a building and just say, that's all, that's too bad, you can come in your neighborhood or anybody's neighborhood. And so we need to stop as I just want to know, come to me and let me know how we can have some help, because we as a community need help now. Demolition is scheduled for August 2015. A lot of people, parents, don't even know that their children's school is being demolished and the recreation center is going to be gone. I'm sorry to get so passionate, but this is on my heart right now, and maybe this is a place where I could find some help for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on, work with me. Living on the streets of Baltimore, I witnessed looting, destruction, anger, frustration, fear. This kind of violence is long overdue. Us as the people, parents, community leaders, church leaders need to be a part of the community to help engage in making changes for the youth of Baltimore City. We are positive, outgoing leaders. We understand to be leaders, role models, or mentors, so our kids won't fall to the streets. It's our responsibility to be their strength. It's our responsibility to show them a better way of living. Stand up and be a part.
So we want to thank our panel and in the words of Dean Clagg, that on behalf of our institution, we thank you, and we will continue to be engaged and to be involved for the long haul. Thank you.